Yes, good morning, our esteemed listeners. A very, very warm welcome to the National Radio, RTNB Radio. Here we are. That is the African Union anthem, as you've just heard. You continue to hear it in the background. And today is a very, very special day, and a very special guest in my studio today here. Good morning to all of you there, and welcome to our special live radio show. We are also thrilled to be bringing you this program on the extraordinary celebration of the 60th anniversary of the African Union. So this week's make a historic milestone for the continent of Africa as it celebrates 60 years of unity, progress, and transformation. So this is a moment of great significance and pride of our continent as we reflect on the achievements of the challenges that have at least shaped us over the past 60 years as the African Union in service since 1963. So in the studio, I'm together with a senior political officer of the African Union office here in Bujumbura. He's Patrick Gonzague. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, bro.
Welcome to this live radio show here on RTNB Radio.
Thank you very much for the
invitation. And we are glad to receiving you here.
Actually, it's a pleasure. And then I'm greeting all the listeners wherever they are. And wish them happy Africa Day celebration.
This is a very, very special day, not only for the office here, for the all of the continent.
Indeed, it is a special day for all Africans because today is an International Africa Day, which means the diaspora, they are also celebrating. And if we go even further, the humanity started in Africa. So the humanity is Africa, so we are all celebrating Africa.
So we are celebrating Africa. Like I said earlier, is that we are at least talking achievements on the milestone from 1963 to date. So let us begin with the formation of the African Union. It is that what inspired the formation of the African Union 60 years ago?
Thank you very much. We on 25th May 1963 in Addis Ababa, that's when the first meeting was held due to the event that most of African countries were still under colonial powers and rules, but there was already this Pan-Africanism ideas, to make sure that Africa is free from all the bondages. So the result of this first meeting was the creation of the first continental institution, OAU, the Organization for the Africa Unity, which is a manifestation of the Pan-African vision, for a united Africa, free, and which is a master of its own destiny. That was the solemn declaration in the OAU Charter as adopted on 25th May, which has 5 objectives, main objectives. The first was to promote the unity and solidarity of the African states. The second was to coordinate and intensify their cooperation and effort to achieve a better life for the people of Africa. The third was to defend the sovereignty of African countries, their territorial integrity and independence. The fourth was to eradicate all forms of colonialism from Africa. And the last was to promote international cooperation, having due regard to the Charter of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Okay, so and on this, how has the African Union evolved over the years since its establishment in 1963?
Thank you very much. After this, we went from all the way from 1963 up to 2000. 2000, it's a both marks many things that happened. We are already in after the cold is a post-cold war. World War era. La guerre froide, as we say in French. and there was a need to revamp a bit the spirit and the objectives of the African Union. At that time, most countries were free. Remember, South Africa was already free from the apartheid, and there was a need to have a new vision of the African Union. And that's how, the discussion started in Libya, in Sirte, and then concluded in Durban, in South Africa, to have the African Union. And then the AU was guided with its vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. So the objectives of the African Union, adding to the OAU, was the many actually achieve greater unity and solidarity between African countries, defend the sovereignty, which were actually in the OAU, accelerate the political and socio-economic integration of the continent, promote and defend the African common position on issue of interest to the continent and its people. And then now the rest of the objectives were to encourage international cooperation, promote peace and security and stability on the continent, promote democratic principles and institutions, popular participation of and good governance, where the diaspora came in, promote and protect human and people's rights in accordance with the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights, and other relevant human rights instruments from the global, establish the necessary conditions which enable the continent to play its role in the global economy and international negotiations, promote sustainable development at the economic, social, and cultural levels, as well as the integration of African economies, promote cooperations in all fields of human activity to raise the living standards of African people, coordinate and harmonize the policies between the existing and future regional economics for the gradual attainment of the objectives. So we're talking about regional economics, which were like 4, now we have about 8, the West, North, East, Central, Southern. Then we have also COMESA and IGAD coming in. It was also an objective to advance the development of the continent by promoting research in field, science and technology, work with relevant international partners to eradicate preventable diseases and promotion of good health on the continent, ensure effective participation of women in decision making, particularly in political, economic, and social cultural areas, develop and promote common policies on trade, defense, and foreign relations to ensure that the continent is well defended and strengthening its negotiation positions. Maybe we shall talk about some of these aspects in more details. The last was to invite and encourage the full participation of African diaspora as an important part of our continent in the building of the African Union. So you can see that from OAU, focusing on the liberation of Africa, African Union was now focusing on opening up the continent and the continental organization to defend itself as a strong bloc actually in the concept of nations.
Thank you. That is Patrick Gonzague, the senior political officer at the African Union office here in Bujumbura. We know that everything has a challenge. We would like to know what are the challenges, at least that African Union faced in its 60 years of existence.
Thank you very much, brother. If we say that there are always achievement without challenges, it would be lying. Countries, the first challenge was first the colonial masters who kept interfering in the affairs of the African state. Up to date, some of these colonial masters were not happy leaving Africa. And I can assume what I'm saying, most of these Western countries, had more, their resources are basically from Africa. No, having African state independent, was not welcomed. So they find all means, to interfere both in the political decision making, both in choices of leaders. That's how we have some coup d'etats that were, guided or maybe formatted and also orchestrated and held by some of these powers. So we have also the challenges where African continent or African states are more importing goods from the outside and less exportation. And this particular section, maybe we shall discuss when I talk about the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is coming as a response to this challenge. So the other challenge, I could say, is African people themselves. Many did.
What do you mean?
Well, I have met some African fellows who actually are still like with the colonized mind, who don't want to free themselves, because the freedom is first the status, the mental status, where you understand that I'm free and I defend my freedom. Some prefer to run behind the masters instead of relying on their own country or their own leaders on the continent to defend the continent.
The continent,
and then the continent, it's a responsibility of all Africans. There are many challenges, but actually, but Africa is not an island. Has to rely on actually other partners. That's when the negotiations come in, the cooperation, so that we look at what is in their best interest of Africa. Then the African states are actually doing that, but all Africans should be driven by that, let's say, orientation.
Okay, Mr. Patrick, let us now talk about this day. The celebration, you're marking the 60th, it's like commemorating the 60th anniversary of the African unity. It is that on this day, I would like to say, what is this African Day and why is it so important?
Thank you very much. This day, I believe it's special, not only for the continent, but also for, the global, because it marks the beginning or the born of the organization. That's one. And it's also special because it's the occasion to share information, knowledge, and best practices, both in the past, during the OAU and the AU, and encourage, all fellow Africans, wherever they are, actually to adopt or to own the vision of the African Union as embedded in the Agenda 2063. It's also an opportunity for the AU to reflect, on the spirit of the Pan-Africanism, to make the link between the past, the present, and the aspiration of the continent. And since we are talking in Burundi, the today celebration, which brings, the group of ambassadors, African ambassadors, we're talking about between 12 and also 15 that are accredited in Burundi. So we will have a round table discussing about this, the past experience of AU, since we have some ambassadors who were already born during that time.
Yeah.
Then for us, the young generation, we do the, let's say, the link between the, it could be considered as intergenerational dialogue, but this is more a diplomatic where we reflect on AU. And then when I say the AU, member states are actually the first players of the African Union. So the round table will actually reflect on all this. And I'm glad to announce that that round table will be, if you want me to talk about the whole program or just the round table.
Yeah, you can just talk about the round table.
The round table will be at 4 p.m., okay. 16 heures for the Francophones, and then it will be about an hour where ambassadors will be discussing about their role, their country's role, but also the African Union at large. And we shall have also a guest of honor from Burundi, for sure, to discuss about certain areas. And then later on, we shall have, the opening ceremony and the dinner, where we cheer out, and we celebrate the African one.
So before we at least switch to exactly what you do and go through more details about the projects of the African Union here in Burundi also and also in Africa, let us first have a look at the formation of the African Union office here in Bujumbura.
Thank you very much. Actually, the African Union office here in Burundi, maybe some know it as AMIB, which was African Mission in Burundi. Then it came to MIAB, Mission Africaine in Burundi. And then MIOB, keep changing. Today, the official is African Union Liaison Office for the Great Lakes region. Actually, it's an office that works for the Great Lakes and Burundi. So it started actually in 96. For those who recall, Burundi was going through, a crisis, and then we are in a post.
If it is 96, does that makes it one of the oldest offices in Africa?
Exactly, one of the oldest liaison office. The liaison office maybe serves as an embassy for countries. We are in a post-genocide. At the time, it was after the Rwandan genocide. So the idea was to stop, the crisis in Burundi, or maybe to support the authorities not to fall into a next genocide. Because that would have been very chaotic for the continent. And then if I recall, I think it was under president who is still living, either Sylvestre Bantunganya or Domitien. I think both played, the two excellencies played a great role.
A vital role, yeah.
Exactly. So the office came under that time, and it has been changing the mandate due to the cycles and the events were happening in Burundi. I can tell you that the African Union has been very, very instrumental in Burundi, supportive also. And then in return, Burundi is also very supportive to the African Union vision, and that's why Burundi is sending the soldiers in Somalia, and also in Central Republic. So I don't know if I should tell the audience what are the core mandate of the office here.
Yeah, okay.
Because we are supporting the activities of ICGLR, which is the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, in order to implement the Pact on Security. We ensure that the promotion of the African Union positions on issues, in the ICGLR and also in this region. We work closely with the government of Burundi and other countries in the Great Lakes region, both are the special envoys. We have the UN Special Envoy in Nairobi, where we co-chair the Peace, Security and Cooperation Framework. And under this, we had the recent concluded summit in Bujumbura under the Addis Ababa Accord, and Burundi under the leadership of His Excellency Evariste Ndayishimiye, who is the chairperson of the Addis Ababa Accord, which we call the Peace and Security Cooperation Framework. So our office has the mandate to implement this and to work closely with SADC, ICGLR, and the UN office in Nairobi for the implementation of this for the Democratic Republic of Congo and other countries in the region. We provide also necessary support to Burundi government effort to consolidate peace and accelerate the reconstruction and socio-economic rehabilitation. We facilitate, as appropriate, the follow-up and implementation in the region of relevant African Union instrument regarding to prevention of conflict, consolidation of peace, and post-conflict, the AU programs, democracy, human rights, and rule of law, disarmament, and fights terrorism, and other relevant matter. But also, the office had a mandate to follow up on the Arusha Agreement on Burundi, and follow up the implementation, actually, of the Addis Ababa Accord that I have told you, and support the work of the African Union Commission and the Peace and Security Council. So these are the broad mandates of our office in Burundi.
Might be running short of time. You can just tell us the vision of our African Union.
The African Union vision, as in the Agenda 2063, and then I invite all of you, our dear listeners, to really visit and read about the Agenda 2063. We have the flagship project where the continent is inspiring of an integrated high-speed train network. By the way, the train network from Tanzania, which will go through Bujumbura and DRC, is part of this
Are you talking about the SGLR?
Yes.
Standard Gauge Railway?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's part of the first flagship project of the Agenda 2063. Ethiopia and Djibouti, Kenya, I think they are already on that.
It's already in Kenya and Uganda, we have already started.
And some other countries in West Africa and North, they have already done that. So the idea is to connect the whole Africa by road, by railway, by airspace also. We have also the other project to have the African commodity strategy, and then the African Continental Free Trade Area, which will actually defend this. Then we are intending to have the African passport for free movement of people. The idea, we have already the passport for the AU officials, but the idea is to have one passport for all
member
Africans.
States.
Yes, for all Africans. But it starts first from the regional economy,
yeah.
where you have the passport of East Africa, you have the passport of ECOWAS and others. But the end result, we shall have one passport for all Africans. Yes. And then we have also the project on silencing the guns, which was ending by 2020 and then is now been added. We have the Grand Inga project, which is in DRC. The Inga is both funded by NEPAD and other African Development Bank. We think to have the single African air transport market, African Economic Forum, supported by the African Financial Institution, the Pan-African E-Network, the Africa Outer Space Strategy, the Africa Virtual and Electronic or E-University, Cybersecurity, and the Great African Museum. So you can see that these flagship projects to implement the AU vision is to have an African continent is strong, with our youth actually playing a great role for the empowerment, for the employment. Then we are having like 1 million youth employment at the African Union Commission level. So there are a lot happening that I really invite our dear listeners to visit regularly. Opportunities that actually at the African Union level, especially the youth. We do train each year, sometimes twice, the youth from all over the continent. They meet in different countries where we have the AU volunteers. We have also those who want to work for the African Union. We have many opportunities. They just have to visit the website and to learn more about the African Union and the activities.
So talking about how does the African Union intend to address the ongoing issues of conflicts and wars in the various African countries?
Brother, thank you very much. The conflicts, are inherent to our human living.
Yeah, we've seen conflicts all in West Africa, in East Africa, and
You're right.
Yeah.
So we have the African Peace and Security Architecture, APSA, under which we have many players. And then the African Union is already playing a key role in addressing some of these conflicts. We have recently had very success in Ethiopia with the mediation.
With the Tigrays.
Tigray and then
the government,
TPLF and the government of Ethiopia. They have come together under the leadership of the African Union.
Congratulations for that.
Yeah, Africa is one. And the principle of African Union is that African problems should be solved with African solutions. You know, there are many interferences from outside because not everybody wants to see Africa really free from bondages, free. So that's why we have all these conflicts. And then we have structural conflict, of course, poverty and then others. But we are working very tirelessly, both in Sudan, for instance, where African Union played a role in the previous, after al-Bashir, to have the transition government. And now we are also playing a role, both in the DRC. We just have the recent summit. Musa Faki was here, the chairperson of the African Union, to show you that we are really following this. And then in West Africa, African Union is also following through. We have a principle of what we call the when the regional economic communities have to play the first role. You know, the subsidiarity principle. So the AU has, you know, like its children, they play the role. So the REX, like the EAC, SADC, ECOWAS, and others, so they play the first role at their region because they are closer to the problem. Then when there is a need to escalate it to the higher level, then the continental body will now come in. But we keep, you know, supporting all ongoing efforts. And then I can tell you, AU is really doing a great job.
Beautiful voices of the African Union anthem. So, Mr. Patrick, for those who are just tuning in, African is celebrating the 60th anniversary of the African Union. And today, here in the studio, it's Patrick from the African Union office here in Bujumbura. He's a senior political officer known as Patrick Gonzague. So, Patrick, what has so far the African Union achieved in these last 60 years?
Thank you, dear brother. I think in a few minutes remaining, it's difficult to talk about the achievement of 60 years. Yeah. But what I can tell you is that African Union has achieved a lot. There are many instruments. You know, defending the Africa and African continent and African people in the global area. And right now we are actually fighting to have the seat at the Security Council. So African Union is playing this. When I talk about African Union, it's all member states and all organs playing the key role. So there are many achievements. We are having the organs, we are having the economic commissions, we are having like the AFCFTA, which is going to revamp the investment and the economic development of Africa. So there are a lot. And then I invite our listeners to visit the website again of the African Union, which is www.auint.org. You just write African Union, you get the link.
The link,
and everything and all the achievement, most of the information I have shared here are public, and then anyone has access to that. And it's really a great honor and pleasure for me to be here with you. And
Patrick, very lastly, before we end this program, is that what is the African Union's message to African people? particularly for those who are listening right now and those who are not listening, on this 60th anniversary?
Thank you very much. The theme of today's celebration is our Africa, it's our future. The message is for all of you, my fellow Africans, the youth. Africa, it's our continent, and it's our responsibility to defend it at all costs, because we only have this continent. But this continent has 55 countries. So the 55 countries have the equal right also to defend. So when we come together as a continent, we are strong. We need to own the organization. We need to own the instrument, because our heads of state, our leaders, have actually designed these instruments to defend us, to promote our vision and also all our achievement and our children. So I invite all Africans, fellow Africans listening to me, both in Burundi, in the diaspora and elsewhere, to own the African Union and the vision, because it's more about our children. It's for more of the future. We will not be there for the Agenda 2063, but at least our children and our great children will be there. We need to learn. The first power is knowledge. Once you have knowledge, then you know how to defend, your rights. But when you don't know, anyone will come and tell you stories, and you believe in lies. So I have taken, let's say, a challenge to talk about the African Union, the instrument of the African Union, then all the achievement of the African Union, all the vision, anywhere. So it's my responsibility, and I remain available at any time to share lines, to share experiences.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Patrick. We are coming to the end of our program, and Patrick, we really thank you for accepting our invitation to be here to share the achievements, challenges, and the future of African Union. We really thank you, and we welcome you once again in case there is any other issue to share with the people of Africa or the people of Burundi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear brother, Ayuda Bigirimana, and I hope I pronounce your name very well.
Okay.
And then I thank also the listeners,
yeah.
And then I invite them to continue celebrating this day. It's our day.
So thank you, the listeners, for those who have been tuning in, and we really thank you for being with us for this 1-hour English program. It's been me, Ayuba Bigirimana, and our guest, Patrick Gonzague, on this 60th anniversary of the African Union. Bye for now.